The StringKing Mark III V is awesome, but we need a history lesson first. John Grant Jr., Tom Schreiber, Brennan O'Neill. What do these three superstars have in common? They define a generation, not just a team, a draft class, a program, a franchise, a generation. But I'm not just talking about a generation of athletes. I'm talking about a generation of heads, the StringKing Mark series. The StringKing Mark I released all the way back in 2015, promising players simplicity, consistency, and affordability without sacrificing high-end performance. Some were skeptical. A $70 head from a new kid on the block who up to this point has only made mesh and strings? How could they compete with the tried and true of the big name lacrosse manufacturers, STX, Maverick, Warrior? I mean, at $70, it must be flimsy, right? They promised this head could and would compete at a high level, but at first, nobody, including myself, was really that convinced. Then, John Grant Jr. happened.
I don't think he has to nowadays. It's John Grant Jr. He's certainly not the problem tonight. Oh, man.
To individual players.
Jr. scores while falling down.
All-Star game
MVP. Gets inside and beats Adams. Absurd. Hey, this man. He's looking for 8 is enough, and he gets it. I mean, I'm doing my 25-pound curls. This Junior has 9 times.
Oh.
He's got it! He's got it! Major League Lacrosse history!
In 2016, he took the field in the MLL against the New York Lizards and put up an all-time record 10 goals in one game. Yeah, he was using the cheap $70 stick from the first-time manufacturer. And well, that was more than enough to convince me to buy one. This right here is the first real short stick that I have ever owned. Back in 2016, I've been playing lacrosse for quite a few years, but was a long pull, so I didn't really have a use for anything like this. I wanted something to mess around with. It was an easy option for me to pick. Why not give it a shot? I never really used this thing outside of honestly just the backyard or messing around, so I don't want to comment too much on the specific performance details and how good or not good it was, strengths and weaknesses. But there were quite a few pros outside of just John Grant Jr. who did use the thing, so it must have been pretty decent at a high level, right? Anyways, this has a special place in my heart. It's the first head I've ever strung. I've probably done it about 1,000,000 times, putting 100 different pockets in this thing, really learning and honing my craft. My first ever die was on this head, and it's pretty decent if you ask me for my first die. Come on. Matches the high school colors. I mean, kind of. The yellow is not perfect and neither is the blue, but it's close enough. And eventually it was enough to convince me and tons of other people to go for the Mark II when it eventually came out. Now, if you couldn't already tell from what's located behind me, I have 3 different Mark IIs. I think I have 2 2Ts and a 2D. I forget which is which, but I loved these heads. The Mark I definitely made a splash. It got StringKing's name out there as a new legit head manufacturer that could produce a solid product, but it was still far from perfect. It performed good, but not great. It was strong, but not unbreakable. It strung well, but it definitely had a certain type of pocket that it liked. And the options with the stringing holes were somewhat limited. And worst of all, kind of lacked character a little bit. There wasn't anything that really stood out about it. No parts of the game that it excelled in. It was a jack of all trades, but definitely a master of none. It just simply wasn't better than some of the true top of the line heads out there. It was close though, and at $70, definitely commendable. Well, that all changed. In comes the Mark II V, priced right at $90. Now, this is the Mark II T. I never owned a 2V, but I've messed with and strung and played with a ton of them. This definitely moves it into the top high-end level of heads, still a bit more affordable than the rest of them, but it is definitely a top tier head, at least in terms of price. I said the Mark I made a splash in the lacrosse community. Well, the Mark IIs were an absolute tsunami. Notice how with all the Mark IIs, there's an extra little letter at the end. It's a series now. Well, that's because there wasn't just one Mark II, like there was only one Mark I. There's actually 6 of these things. You've got the 2V for versatile, meant for midfielders. The 2A, which stood for attack, which was meant for attackmen. The 2T, which stood for transition, meant for short stick middies, LSMs, box players, my personal favorite. The 2D, which stood for defense, meant for defenders. I used that one too, liked it a lot. 2F for face-off men, and the 2G for goalies rounded out the lineup snap. And having 6 different versions of the same head was a pretty foreign concept at the time that these came out, and it still kind of is. They're really the only ones that do this. But it wasn't just a gimmick, it actually made sense. All the heads did have consistencies. They felt similar, they played similar, they strung similar, but they obviously did have their unique differences. They were all super fine-tuned for their individual roles. StringKing had a head for everyone. At one point, I'd say a good 1/3 of all my teammates were using a Mark II series head. It's stiffer, it's stronger, it has the most holes I've ever seen on a head, even to this day. I think it's like 20, something like that. It's ridiculous. A stringer's dream. Consistent, it was accurate, it was elite, and dare I say, the best scoop a lacrosse head has ever had. These things are an absolute vacuum. Specifically with the 2D, you could be coming out of ground ball with the most ridiculous angle. You know, your coach tells you to come in flat, get your bottom hand down. You could come in like this with the thing, and you'd still pick up that ground ball real easily. I played the majority of my lacrosse with either a 2T or a 2D, and I've never broken one, and they've barely even warped on me. I mean, let's look at this one. I've used this for like 3 years probably, and the face shape's still pretty good. It's a bit tighter. All the poke checks kind of compress the head a little bit. It's a little crooked. You can kind of see it right here. This part's a little higher than this part, but for 3 years worth of play in all weather, summer, fall, winter, it's not bad. But they came out 7 years ago and somehow are still relevant, performing at a super high level, and people are loving them to this day. And for lacrosse gear, that's almost unheard of. Most gear becomes obsolete in 1 to 2 years. If they have really good staying power, maybe they can stretch it out to 3 or 4 years, but 7 years of relevancy is almost unheard of. That long wait finally brings us to this moment today. We got it, boys. The Mark III V is finally here in my hands. I can't wait to open this thing up. I was lucky enough to get the 3V sent to me early, about 2 weeks before the actual release date. Your boy is well connected these days. If you've seen my Instagram over the past couple weeks, you know I'm super hyped about this new product, this new head. Obviously, you heard me explain how much I've used these heads in the past. I'm definitely gonna use them into the future. Well, hopefully I will. If it's good, I'm gonna be super honest with you in this review. So no more gimmicks. Let's get right into it. This is the first time I'm seeing this thing in person. I've seen pics on Instagram, but obviously that doesn't do it justice at all. You really got to get your hands on these heads to feel them, to know if you think you're gonna like them or not, and understand the performance of it. Let's get into my live reaction. All right, this is no BS. I've never seen this thing in person. This is my complete live reaction. I'm not supposed to be saying the name of the person who sent me this. I guess they might get in trouble or something, but you know who you are. Thank you very, very much for sending this out to me. Ooh-wee. Ooh-wee. Wow. Wow. Interesting. All right, so first impressions right off the bat. It's about as stiff as the other ones. Maybe even a little less, honestly. A little less stiff than the two. Well, it's not really a fair comparison because I'm kind of comparing it to the ones I'm used to, the 2D and the 2T, which are meant to be stiffer, obviously, since you're using that defense, and this is an offensive head, so it's not gonna be as stiff. But just thinking back to my time working at Lacrosse Unlimited, I feel like the 2V was a little stiffer than this. It's not bad though. It's still strong. I'm not really able to bend it. All right, so besides the stiffness, what do I really notice about this thing off the bat? It's gonna be really tough to show you guys since it's a black head. So first things first, I'm just putting this pillow here so you guys can see it. So as far as the face shape, I feel like it is a little tighter than the Mark II. It seems like it flares a bit higher up in the head, up here, where I feel like the other ones maybe flared like slightly shorter, maybe like an inch below. The top string holes are a bit goofy in my opinion. I get it, it's got some options, but I feel like they should have put like one more here and one more there. Yeah. I feel like if you're gonna put that many top string holes, you might as well put them in the middle too, so you can have ultimate options. This is pretty interesting too. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus here. And you guys kind of see that? You see how there's these like string holes that look like they should be there, but they're not actually holes? That's interesting. I do really like the fact that you have really big, really wide holes up top where you're gonna be doing your double, triple loops. That's great. I think this thing might even have more string holes. Oh yeah, look at that. This does definitely have more string holes than the 2s. No ball stop is kind of interesting. I'm not mad because, I mean, ball stops don't really do much, but I haven't seen that lately. StringKing has always had a problem with their ball stops falling off. I mean, look at this one. I lost this one forever ago. No ball stop. I definitely see the shorter throat. That'll definitely be an advantage when you're trying to control and cradle the ball. Got some nice branding right up top. I don't know if you're definitely not gonna be able to see that, but it says Mark 3V up there with like the square around it, the same logo that's been on their Instagram. And then the same little StringKing branding right here, which you're also definitely not gonna be able to see, but it says StringKing the same way it's been since the Mark 1. And they do still have the locking bolt, I believe they call it tech, where you're supposed to screw in something from the backside like normal, but then there's also, I don't know what to call it, another screw thing that goes in this way. So it kind of, you can lock in the screw on your shaft from both sides to make sure it's extra secure. I was never too big of a fan of that. It was always a pain to put that in your shaft unless you had a StringKing shaft that was pre-drilled on both sides, meant to take one of these heads. If not, kind of useless, but it's, you know, it's good to have, I guess. One thing I'm not super pumped about are the bottom string holes on this. It's the exact same as it was on the 2 series, and I don't get why they don't just put 4 symmetric, same sized bottom string holes in this, because this is a little complicated. It's hard to get some strings through, especially if you don't have that plastic antlet on the side, you're using a cut string. It's tough to lace them through there. It's kind of symmetric, but the one in the middle, I never loved it. I still doubt I'm gonna love it. Looking at the side profile of it, this thing definitely looks like, where's the deepest point? Right here, I'd say. So that's like perfectly in the middle of the head. So it's a midfielder's head, so you would expect it to be meant for a mid pocket, which I'm not mad about. But judging by this, I don't know. I think this will have a lot of stringing options. You can definitely go with a lower pocket on this thing. There is some depth down here for sure. But based on the pinch and the flare of it up here, I think anything from like a mid-high to a mid-low would be really good. I think this will take a perfect mid-pocket really nice. I could see Attackman loving this. I'm thinking mid-low is where this thing's gonna work best. All right, so that's pretty much everything I can talk about without stringing this head and then throwing it. So let's get right into stringing this thing. So let's see. I think we're gonna throw this on this shaft down here. This is an interesting little stick. This is actually Gate Women's Flex Mesh in this old STX Stallion on a cut down ECD Carbon 2. I think this was a deep hole. I snapped it and turned it into a shorty. So we're gonna throw that 2V on here, get a little black theme going. It's the only way to get a shaft off. Oh, that was easier than I thought. Won't need that for a while. All right, let's see. I actually don't know if I even have mesh to string this with. I might need to hit up Lacrosse Unlimited real quick. Oh, look at that. I do have mesh. Do I have strings? Yeah, I do. Let's see. Yeah, it should be good enough. So definitely a bit of a mishmash of materials that I'm going to be using on this thing. Got the ECD Hero 3. That's my personal favorite. I haven't tried Hero 4 yet, but I'll probably have a review of that coming for you guys soon. I have 2 StringKing sidewalls, and then I think this is just off the spool from Lacrosse Unlimited. StringKing nylon, better than ECD's nylon. Hot take, not really. It's facts. If you ever used it, you know that. StringKing bottom string and 1 StringKing shooter. I think I'm just gonna do something pretty simple on this since it's my first time stringing it. Probably just gonna do like 3 anchor knots and then a bunch of 1s. Not get too complicated because I want to feel the head. I want to let the head speak for itself. I don't want to put a complicated pattern in there. So I can't really tell, you know, what's the head's influence, what's this pattern's influence, yada, yada, yada. So something pretty simple because I just want to see how the head actually works. I don't really care about the pocket right now. All right, we got everything ready. Let's get right into it. Off the bat, I already do have a comment about the stringability of this head. Not that it's a big deal. This is obviously my first time stringing it, but I skipped that top sidewall hole to start the top string on. So I'm starting at hole number 2. I thought going to hole number 3 to start the top string would have been way too much, but I think I actually should have moved it down that 1 hole. Something about the spacing up here is a little weird, especially I went from this side to this side. I ended over here. Once you get over here, these string holes want to stretch a bit more, but kind of just because of the spacing of these top string holes, it's kind of bunched up on this right side. I think I really wish that one of these center holes, one of these in the middle, was just moved a little bit more to the middle. It's kind of awkward. Like, you have to really jam these together a bit. It's not a big deal. If I had to go back again, I bet I would probably just string this hole all the way at the end, string this one all the way in the center, same thing all the way in the center, and then this one all the way in the end. So probably not a big deal once you string this the second or third time, but just on a first initial reaction kind of thing. Not loving the top string holes, not the biggest of deals though. It's at this point of stringing the head when it comes to breaking it in before you do the shoes and the bottom string. I really wish that I had one of those wooden baseball bats they got at Lacrosse Unlimited just in my house, because you can break in a pocket like 90% of the break-in in about, I don't know, 10-15 seconds. But I'm about to have to sit here for, geez, I don't know, a good 15-20 minutes just doing it like this. This sucks. I'm not happy that I gotta be doing this, but we're almost done. It is all strung up and ready to go. You guys are probably gonna notice pretty instantly. Yes, I did not cut the strings yet. I've got a bunch of slacks tied off here. Same thing on the bottom. I left it all here just because I know for a fact I'm gonna be messing with this thing, fine-tuning it for exactly the type of pocket I want, what works exactly for me. So that's obviously easier to do if the strings are still long and you have the extra slack. It kind of looks ugly right now, but just deal with it. I'll actually be playing with this thing and getting it perfect. As far as the pocket goes, I did almost exactly what I said I was gonna do. I'd say this is like a perfect mid pocket, mid-low. It's definitely not broken in yet. It's broken in a little bit. I mean, you saw it in the time-lapse video, but you know, you got to use it for a couple days, couple weeks until it really breaks in. It's nice. I like it. It strings very similarly to the twos. Not exact though. You're not going to be able to take your patterns and perfectly just copy and paste into the 3Vs. You can do something very similar. You just might have to make a subtle adjustment, maybe one knot you'll have to change, move it up or down a sidewall hole, something like that. But it's strung up pretty nice. It was real easy. The holes up top are big. I mentioned what I didn't really like up top with the top string holes. That's super minor though. Now that I'm finished with the head, it's honestly not even that big a deal. It all kind of tensioned out perfectly once I did the whole thing. The bottom string, like I said earlier, it's the exact same as in the 2 series. I don't love it, but it works. Let's see what kind of channel looks like. Wait, let's give it the good old, yeah, pretty good channel. Wait, a little blurry. I don't know, it's strung up pretty nice. I like it. I can definitely see this thing being good for like one of these more mid-low, some basic stuff. It shifts a little bit. I honestly don't think you'll be able to get that great of a mid-high in this thing. If you're really nice at stringing, you can definitely make it happen for sure. I can definitely see it, but I think this is definitely meant for more of a mid-pocket. I mean, look, if I'm like even pushing it up, trying to get that like mid-high profile, kinda. It's not bad. I like it. Very similar to the 2V, I'd say. Very similar. This honestly feels a little bit more like the 2A than the 2V. I'm not mad about it though. Pretty nice. It's strung real easy. I really don't have any complaints yet. I guess there's really only one thing to do. Let's go test this thing out. All right, so one more quick thing I do want to mention very briefly about the pocket pattern that I did put into this. I did try and keep it super basic. Started on the top string, tying off in the second sidewall hole. The sidewall, I started on the third sidewall hole. I skipped 3, anchor knot. What did I skip? I think another 3, anchor knot. And I said I was going to do a third anchor knot. I didn't. Whatever you call that. I think that's an SI. I don't know. I have unique terms for it. So I skipped 2, put the SI. I actually did a second SI after skipping 2. And then we kept it basic. We skipped 2, 1, skip 2, 1, skip 2, 1. And then just a pretty basic tie off. It's not a complicated pattern. If you guys know how to string, you can see what's going on here. Something super simple. Only unique thing I didn't predict was these two. Wait, these two, this one and this one. Those are SIs, not anchor knots. So this is genuinely 100% my first time that I'm gonna be throwing with this thing. Just having it in my hands, messing around with it. I mean, yeah, the hold's there. I can throw my fakes. yeah, I mean, it feels pretty good, dude. This ball's not coming out. You know, a little bit of props to the stringer, of course, but this thing feels good. It feels nice and light, too. Like, it doesn't feel top-heavy whatsoever. I think that might be something I didn't mention in the beginning that's really relevant, but it's super light. Let's see. So it's kind of tough when you're dealing with a head for the first time that you've never thrown with. It's kind of hard to tell what characteristics that you're feeling in the stick come from the pocket that you put in it versus the actual head. Huh. This is interesting. I like it, that's for sure. It's different than the two. So here's what I got so far. That was like 3 minutes of throwing against the wall. But it's very like whippy, if that makes sense. I'm not whip. I'm not talking about whip. Like, it's not throwing down, but I feel like the ball gets to this point in the head right under the shooters, and it wants to like, it feels like it flies out with more speed than it should based on, I don't know. Let's say I'm throwing it and I'm throwing it with enough power that I expect it to come out of my stick at 70 miles an hour. With another head, I think with this one it's coming out at like 75, maybe 80, if that makes sense. Like, it whips out a little more. It throws the ball a little harder than you would think. Another thing is that it doesn't tend to click off the mesh at all. It's out of my stick. It's out of my pocket before the plastic most of the time. You know, if I throw like a regular, like short-handed, it's out. If I throw it like this, it's out. But if I really like exaggerate it and like really follow through with my wrist, yeah, it'll click off the plastic. But I actually like that because it's more responsive. The stick lets you know what's going on when you do certain things like that. I mean, you see the hold's good. This thing has a lot of control. That's for sure. It feels super accurate too. Like, you guys see that black dot? Nah, probably not. Where there's a black dot, I'm gonna hit it. And I missed by a little bit, like a ball length. There, I hit it. I like this thing. I mean, let's see some underhand. Yeah. Some of you guys might like to, you know, keep your bottom or your top hand a little lower, so let's try that. That feels nice and natural. Doesn't feel like the ball is getting away from me at all. I still feel like I'm in complete control. Complete accuracy. Let's try the opposite. Let's keep my hand a little bit higher. For those of you who like somewhat of a wider grip. That doesn't feel as nice, to be honest. I think this is gonna work for people who like to dangle a little bit more, you know? Like, keep everything out a little wider than keep it like in close. I don't know, because I can still see this being really good for box. Like, the ball comes out really quick. My quick sticks are super quick. Whoop. It's in and out accurately. I like this thing a lot, guys. Overall, I like it as much as I thought I would. Thumbs up. So after throwing around with it a little bit, what are my initial thoughts on the Mark IIIV? Well, it's good. It's really good. I'm not gonna say it blew me away or it's really impressed me because I had super high expectations for this thing and it met those super high expectations. I don't think it's even possible for this to exceed my expectations until I actually get out there and play with this thing in a game or outside, you know, not just throwing against the wall in my basement. But I'm happy. I'm really happy with it. It feels really good. It strings really nice. It looks really cool. What I am surprised about is how good it just feels to cradle and just control the ball and have it in your stick. Once the ball's in this stick, it doesn't feel like it's coming out. I do feel like I have a ton of control. I think this is actually gonna be really good for dodging, which is a little different than the 2 series was. With the Mark IIs, I felt like they were really super accurate, really good for shooting, really good for passing, really good for stick skills. But when it came to control when you're cradling and, you know, making moves, things like that, the amount of hold, they were good. They were really solid, but they weren't like top of the line, you know, like the best. This I feel like is a bit of a change from that. This I feel like if you're a, you know, if you're a dodger, if you're a dangler, if you like having the ball in your stick, making moves, going through 3 guys, things like that, you know, you're playing like Michael Sowers, just shaking and baking every which way, I think you'll really like this, which wasn't true for the 2s. Like I said, the 2s were, I think, strengths were for your, like, your passers, your shooters, your super fundamental guys. not super fundamental, but your guys who put emphasis on the fundamentals, this, I feel like you could style on dudes with it. Now, once again, this pocket definitely has to break in even more. I definitely have to use this in a real game men's league scenario to figure out my final thoughts on it. You know, I have no idea how the scoop works in terms of ground balls. I'd expect it to be really good. I mean, it looks really good, but I'm happy with it. I like the Mark 3V a lot. I'll have a follow-up review after I actually use it coming for you guys very soon, but initial thoughts, I like it a lot. That's all I have to say about the StringKing Mark 3V. So pumped this thing is out. So pumped to have gotten the opportunity to review it early. And that's really it, guys. If you liked the video, please make sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Shoot me a DM on Instagram if you're interested in this head. We're putting out a ton of content still from the PLL season. I made way too many videos. I have way too many clips still stocked up. But we're gonna be more reviews. I'll have an East Coast Eyes Hero 4 mesh review. We're gonna do a follow-up review on this thing. And let me know of any other products. And a whole ton of stuff coming your way. Whole ton of reviews. Whole ton of Lax content. Thank you guys very much for watching. Have a good day.